Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Therichie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Our next guest is a truly extraordinary woman. She's a brilliant filmmaker, editor, journalist. She absolutely is first class. Check out her website, aboutthesky.com. That's aboutthesky.com. She's done sterling work, like I said earlier on, making films about September the 11th, about Sandy Hook, and about so much more besides geoengineering and chemtrails. She's had an enormous amount of success in carrying this information and getting it to brand new audiences. She's incredibly talented, was on the programme way back at the beginning of the year, and I'm thrilled that she's back today. Let's welcome on this very special programme, Sofia Smallstorm. Sofia, welcome back. How are you?
I'm fine. That was too much stuff you'd said, but that's okay.
You know, it's true though. It is true. Your films on 9/11, the work on Sandy Hook, the work you've done on geoengineering is marvellous. And it's presented in a way that it's likely to grab the attention of people who might ordinarily think that it's crazy conspiracy theory. That's a gift that you have. It's very important. We have to learn how to communicate with people who ordinarily think we're crazy, Sofia, because we have to reach those people. You do a brilliant job of it. I was chatting with David Ike a bit earlier on in the programme. He was talking about you and the work that you've done. I know he's in your neck of the woods at the moment and all of that. In the time we have, we've got about 45 minutes from now, and you're going to talk a little bit about Morgellons, or Morgellons as some people call it, disease. And you sent me some photographs earlier on of somebody you've been communicating with in California. And I've got to say, Sofia, I've never seen anything like them in all my life. For somebody who's never heard of Morgellons disease, do you want to talk about it for a minute?
Yes. Morgellons is not really a disease. It's a takeover of the body. You mentioned the page that I have on my About the Sky website, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And there is some kind of, it's a technological invasion of biological tissues that's going on. It has affected many, many people worldwide. And it starts with little lesions on the skin that are like, if anyone has ever seen a carbuncle, it's similar to a boil, but it craters into the skin. And that's typically a staph infection. This Morgellons syndrome, as we call it, starts with lesions like this, but it can also start with the body issuing shards of what seem like glass or sand. There's a lot of silica and quartz involved. There's a lot of synthetic polymers in the form of fibers. People's bodies issue enormous quantities of colored fibers that look almost like a Christmas ribbon, someone just told me. In fact, I interviewed the person myself for my podcast, the one that you're referring to. This person is a good friend of mine. Her name is Elizabeth. She does not live in California, though. And she would be the most advanced Morgellons sufferer, you could say, that anyone really has ever encountered in the history of this affliction having been made known on the internet and elsewhere.
What do you mean?
There are hospitals and doctors that have acknowledged it, but there's a big moratorium on discussion about this.
What do you mean by advanced, Sofia? I've seen the photographs you sent. I'm struggling to download them. If it doesn't happen now, I'll do it later on. Advanced sounds scary. What does advanced mean exactly? How much is she suffering? What is it doing to her?
Well, it has now progressed into absolutely gigantic lesions. One of them is on her hip, her buttock, stretching down into her leg area, and it's 2 feet long, Richie, 2 feet. And it's the width of 3 of her fingers, and it has never closed up. It develops a red rim that is, in fact, she told me just now that the rim on it, it's like a volcano, crater, and with a big crust on it. And this crust just makes the lesion keep splitting. Now it's growing into fingers that are spreading across her back. She's got another one on her arm that's 11 or 12 inches, just a big, gigantic split in the skin. And the people who start with Morgellons lesions usually have a lot all over their bodies. I've actually seen them. I've seen people walking on the beach. I've even stopped them to ask if they know what the rash is that they have, and they'll look at me very oddly and they'll say, I'm not quite sure. Some people have already Googled it and can name what it is. But these pock marks tend not to be resolved easily, and dermatologists will tell you that you have dermatitis or folliculitis, which is an inflammation of the hair follicle, but they will not treat for this in any successful way. So people are pretty much left on their own.
Now, the fibres, I want to talk a little bit about the fibres. You know, what are they? And has anybody examined them? But more importantly then, what's the best guess today as to where this whole syndrome comes from? Where is it coming from? So the fibres first and foremost, Sofia, what's the story with them?
Well, again, I'm not an expert, but I've been doing a little bit of research on chemtrails and the Morgellons link to chemtrails. Apparently, from the aerosol spraying, we are getting materials that descend into the environment, and they form into three classes of materials. The first would be these particulates that are, metallic salts. There's a lot of aluminum, barium, strontium hitting the ground and affecting the pH of the soil. There are also synthetic fibers in the fallout, the environmental fallout, that are unmatched in any laboratory database. And these fibers eventually take up residence in the skin, and they are very, very traceable in the Morgellons lesions. The people's skin actually issues fibrous puffballs, they're called. And they're visible, and people who have this, their houses and apartments will be absolutely full of fibers. And these are fibers that don't match anything in a university or research facility database. They're definitely synthetic. They are shiny. Lots of people have put them under the microscope and looked at them. Also, in the materials that fall out of the sky are desiccated erythrocytes, red blood cells in dried form. And this is not normal to have this raining down out of the sky. And Clifford Carnicom from the Carnicom Institute has managed to culture these blood cells in the fibers. The fibers actually can make the blood cells within them. So something is happening whereby a synthetic biology, that's why I did the 2 talks on YouTube, From Chemtrails to Pseudo-Life, Part 1, which is subtitled The Dark Agenda of Synthetic Biology, and then Part 2 is Living in the Manhattan Project, also with the main title, From Chemtrails to Pseudo-Life. So there is a frequency phenomenon going on. A lot of people's bodies issue little quartz crystals, glass-like, silica. They're hexagonal. I sent you some photos of, this is actually not from the person's body who I interviewed this morning, but you will see these, they are shiny materials, they glitter, they're definitely technological. And there is another picture that I sent you that shows fibers and crystals coming out of a jelly-like mass. Then there's something that looks like a yellow eel, and actually it's also there with a measuring tape. That came out of my friend's arm. Her arm has a hole in it, a split that's 11 inches long, and it issued out this eel-like thing, which is all synthetic looking, and it was all rolled up, and it has a texture to it. And when she looked at it more closely later on, she saw that it formed that mesh. Do you see that mesh?
Yeah.
The second mesh picture, that came out of her body, that interlocked polymer mesh. And then if you Google industrial nanomesh, synthetic mesh, you will come up with the picture above it. That it's the same kind of thing, same looping. And this is being made in the human body out of lesions, the kind that I've sent you a picture of, these gaping red wounds, gaping.
Gaping wounds in the pictures, gaping wounds. Now, I want to ask this because a lot of listeners want to know this. I know you don't know the answer to this, so you can only speculate. How, in terms of incidences of this, in terms of people turning up with these lesions and their skins excreting this material, Sophia. How common is it becoming? You know, if we could venture a guess, I know we probably can't say 1 in 50 or 1 in 100, but how, you know, common is it for people to come across people with this sort of thing happening?
Well, all I can say, Richie, is my own experience. I have, I would say, 2 to 3 personal friends whom I have known over the years who have this. 2 to 3. This is not people I got off the internet that had it already and contacted me. These are my own cadre of friends. 2 of them developed this, okay? And then in my ambling around in life, I have seen any number of people with what looks very much like this all over their bodies. I have spoken to a few of them, and they have confirmed that they have to do all kinds of weird treatments. Doctors don't help them. One woman said she knew it was Morgellons, and she was a total stranger. So let's just say I have made contact with, I don't know, 4 to 6 complete strangers. And you see, I live in California, so I can see people's bodies on the beach while they're walking.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They'll have on shorts or swimsuits, or people have a lot of bare skin here, bare legs. People have bare legs all year long. And I've seen this Morgellons thing on at least 4 to 6 people. So that's, let's just say, about 8 people in my life, all told, over the last 5 to 6 years or so, maybe 7 years that I've been aware of this. So just that's my cross-section.
That's scary, that, because you know a little bit about it. And that's kind of, you know, that's scary, because a lot of people won't ever have heard of it. And they might be, you know, they might know somebody who's got a skin complaint, and it wouldn't occur to them that it might be this. So it could be a lot more widespread. In fact, last time it came up on this program, a woman came on about 4 months ago called Louise to talk about it. She had it. And while Louise was speaking with us, somebody sent an email to the program to say that they believed that they had or indeed do have it, but that when they went to their doctor, it was written off as any number of things. You know, it's stress, or it's, what was the common one? It might be bed bugs. Have you, you know, fumigated your bedroom and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it could be very common. Loads of comments on it, unsurprisingly. JP in Manchester says it's nanobiotechnology. It's an experiment to see how we can transform. They are pushing evolution and the next transhuman space man, says JP. Is that what it comes down to, Sophia, for you? This is an experiment on people, on changing the genetic makeup of people, living people. That's what they're doing, basically.
Well, I figured this out back in 2009, that this is what it had to be. I saw the film The Age of Transitions by Aaron Franz, and that was about artificial intelligence and the marriage of man with machine. And I knew then that Clifford Carnicom had unearthed these synthetic materials, and they were being developed in the body, in everyone's tissue. It has this embedding of this synthetic material, but not everybody is showing lesions. So I knew then that this is what it was about. It was about transhumanism, and it was about the marriage of man, biological tissue, with technology, especially nanotech. And I then pursued it further and got a little more, conversant in it, shall we say. And right now, Richie, there is so much evidence. We're seeing it all the time. The transhuman agenda has been hailed, as the next great wave for the future, how we can rescue ourselves from our mortality, from conditions that affect us. Nanotech is going to get into our bodies, nanobots, and they're going to organize our bodies and give us, indefinite oxygen carrying capacity and whatnot. But the fact is that this Morgellons syndrome is really, really darkly and deeply experimental. And your writer who wrote in is correct. It is evolutionarily, going for evolutionary impact. I will say that I have seen coming out, not with my own eyes, but photos of things, of an enormous variety of things coming out of my friend's body. And They range from bugs like grasshoppers with little black eyes. Now these would be about a quarter to half an inch long. Moths, gnats, centipedes, which are purple, and then bark and leaves that look like twigs, and real stuff coming from nature. And all of this is being manufactured in the body, in tubules. And if you look at the work of Mark Krasnow from Stanford University, he is famous for tubular morphogenesis, meaning that all organs, all of biological life really comes from the tubule. That let's just take the example of a tree. A tree is a big old tube, the trunk. Then you have branches, more tubes. Then you have leaves, the stems of which are more tubes. Then you look at a leaf and you see that it's all a bunch of fibers going in all different directions. Those are tubules. So our bodies form organs out of tubules also. And this is the beginning of biological creation in terms of shape making and structure. And so I've been looking into biopolymers, the link between biopolymers and synthetic polymers. People are not aware that DNA is a biopolymer. The melanin is a biopolymer. We've got cellulose, that gives plants their structure, is a biopolymer. And cellulose is very close to these synthetic polymers that are being produced now in people's bodies and in labs. And in fact, I learned just the other day that the way they developed synthetic polymers was to tweak biopolymers. So I am wondering if somehow in the body a changeover is taking place, a program that comes in and starts harnessing our body's energy and its manufacturing processes and converts those processes or steals from them such that the body is being used to create synthetic materials. Because my friend tells me that each of her gaping wounds develops all up and down the length of them, these tubules, and she can actually stick her fingers into these tubes. She has to rip them out, and in the tubes are the little sacs that contain the bugs, and she'll have crystals and things coming out with hieroglyphs on them. There are markings on some of these things. So they're being created with, you could say, stamps or imprints of, I don't know if they're logos or what they are.
Well, that's really interesting. Can I just jump in there, because I have to mention this. I don't like doing it because our program is kind of self-explanatory now. We're interested in this, but we're also talking to people whom are new to it. And you, Sofia, without in any way patronising you, you're obviously incredibly intelligent, very bright woman. You know that there are people listening to this and they're thinking, this is crazy. Are we really talking about things being dispersed through aerosols that are infecting our body, and our bodies are hosting these alien, not alien, I don't mean alien now in terms of extraterrestrials, but these foreign bodies, and they are changing inside our body, they are growing, they are producing things within our bodies. I'm wide open to the possibility, Sofia. Obviously I wouldn't be doing this program otherwise, but there are people who think this is absolutely lunacy. How do we address those people? What do we say to them? How do you get them to pay attention to it?
Well, honestly, I don't know. I mean, this is a foreign thought for most people. They cannot, except in science fiction movies, they can't conceive of such a thing happening. But the more you study the artificial intelligence aims and ambitions of the futurists, the more you'll see that they want to take the failures and fallibilities of biology and fix them. Technology will solve problems. It will solve our mortality issues. They are looking to freeze people's bodies so that they can bring them back to life later when they have the technology. And I mean, seriously, there are people who think that was crazy, but that's very much discussed in futurism.
No, you're right. I'm going to back you up now because you are right. There is a gentleman called Zoltan Istvan, and I've invited him on this program. I invited him on last year, and he initially accepted this Zoltan, but then he found out that the program was airing on davidicke.com and he had a change of heart, because he is a futurist and he's a transhumanist. And everything Sofia just said there, this guy endorses. He endorses this merging the body with more and more technology. They talk about this cloud where our brains will be eventually connected to them. They talk about ending growing old, solving all the body's problems with all this invasive technology that's implanted. All of this is true. This guy's been written about on National Geographic. He's been on all the top US news programs. He's written for the Daily Telegraph. I wanted to get him on, not to be rude to him, but just to ask him, is he crazy? Which I suppose is rude. But you know what, Sofia? Where are the major religions of the world on this? Where's the various Christian denominations? Where's Judaism? Where's Islam condemning this madness? Because you'd expect them to, wouldn't you?
I honestly don't think enough people know about it. I mean, I think that some of the people in the conspiracy world have heard about it, but most normal people have never heard of it. And those who develop it tend to go through life, very abandoned and very isolated and very disappointed. And then when it advances into into the late stages and it takes over your life, you have to go through enormous fortitude and try to figure it out. Now, I know a woman, Diane Olive. She wrote a book, and you can buy that book online. Mites, Morgellons, and something else. Gosh, I wish I should have it handy, but I can look it up. Anyway, that book has a great protocol. Let me just look it up. In order for people who have this, to get rid of it quickly. You've got to catch it early. And if you can, then that may be your saving grace. It's Natural Ways for Healing Mites and Morgellons, Diane Olive. It's available on Amazon. But when you're advanced to the point of the people that I have made contact with through my talks and whatnot, listen, I saw a woman who approached me at one of my talks, and she had the blackest, most broken teeth you could ever imagine. I mean, looked like she had chewed on charcoal and her teeth had all broken off. And this is Morgellons. It gets into your gums and it starts it makes your teeth necrotic and they break and they fall off.
These, sorry, Sofia, these mites and these things that you've described, some of the listeners are saying, are there images of these things? And to my knowledge, these have been photographed, and there are photographs. Now, your website, of course, is aboutthesky.com. Are there images on your website, or do I need to send people elsewhere?
I did a show with Sage of Quay on Morgellons, and he included a lot of these images because we discussed this in depth. And I will send you some more images. When I post the show that I did with Elizabeth about Morgellons, I just recorded it. It'll be posted in a few days, hopefully. I will include a link that shows you the bugs, shows you the leaves, shows you, I mean, if you can believe this, Richie, this poor woman had these things come out of her that were like little styrofoam, like green peas, only they had the surface of a golf ball, like geometric surface.
Mottled,
Very small, and she didn't know what they were. And I included them in my talk, Living in the Manhattan Project, Part 2, Chemtrails to Pseudo Life. But the week after I'd given the talk, she called me and she said she was Googling around. She started at some Alex Jones thing and she Googled and came upon the very same materials that had come out of her body only 2 weeks prior. Okay, these little tiny carbon nanospheres, they're called. And she traced them to University of Michigan School of Dentistry. All right? There is a professor there of biologic and material sciences, biomedical engineering, macromolecular science and engineering, material science and engineering. And He made these carbon nanoballs and they came out of her body. And she contacted him by email and said, hey, how is it that my body is making what's on your website? And he said, send me the pictures. And she did. And he never contacted her back. And another one just came out of her last week, purple, the size of a blueberry.
This is disgusting, isn't it? When academics or physicians are shown the images and they don't do anything about it. But I suppose we have to expect it. Just a few tweets because there's so many coming in. Tony tweets, all you need to do is Google Morgellons disease pictures and you will find plenty of pictures. Daniel tweets, transhumanism is not to make us superhuman, but rather to make us subhuman, complete control of human body and mind. Sean Hinchcliffe tweets, Big Pharma makes millions of bucks out of remedies. And of course, to follow that up, those remedies might not even work as well. Wayne tweets, it's a war on consciousness as well as the body. Do not turn to hate and to self-destruction. Hi to David Kona, to Chris, to Jim, to JP. So many tweets coming in about this. Extraordinary. Sofia Smallstorm is on the line. Check her out, by the way, folks. Go to her website, which is aboutthesky.com. That's aboutthesky.com. We're talking about alien objects, not alien as in ETs, but foreign bodies, which are worming their way into our bodies through our skin, through our pores. These things believed to be coming out of planes that are aerosol spraying around the world. We've talked about transhumanism. A number of you have asked me to elaborate on Zoltan Istvan. There is a Wikipedia page for him. Zoltan Istvan is probably the most well-known exponent of transhumanism. This guy is the poster boy for it. You know, he believes that ultimately we should all be walking around looking like Robocop, effectively. Scary stuff, this, Sophia. Funnily enough, we've just had an email from Martin, and Martin says he agrees with Sophia about religion only up to a point, while he agrees that most people don't know anything about it. He can't believe that the Vatican wouldn't know that this is going on. But I suppose I come down on Sophia's side. I can understand how they wouldn't know that it's going on.
Well, listen, Richie, I mean, you know what? All these people are in bed together and they're not going to do anything to muddy the waters. And I'm going to tell you this, that in my opinion, this Morgellons is a program. And it's a program to harness the life energy of biology to get it to serve technology. In my crazy, wild thinking, I wonder if the human body is going to be used to make the life forms. You know, they are eradicating the natural world slowly by all kinds of assaults. The crops are dying, the species are, you know, going extinct. This Monsanto with its GMOs, they're going to license certain limited varieties of plants. They're going to hybridize all the animals, and everything will have to be bought and paid for on an annual basis. And eventually, the human body, imagine this, if the human body, through what they call piezoelectricity and the conversion of our biorhythms into electricity, into voltage, they can actually take frequencies. This is the bedrock of piezoelectric effect, and you can Google that. And they can use the frequencies, even if it's just rhythms, the rhythm of your breathing, the rhythm of your vagus return, your venous return, rather, your blood coming back up through your valves. That can be harnessed into an electric effect, which can run machinery. So I believe that they're using our biology in stages. They're experimenting with it and trying to get us to make and manufacture different life forms such that biology will serve technology forever, and not the way it is now, where technology serves biology. It enhances our lives. You get a pair of eyeglasses, you get some crutches, you get a wheelchair, you get a car, you get a computer. It's all life enhancing, but it's going to be the other way around. We're going to be kept plugged into machines because we'll no longer need fuel sources. The human being, living things, will be the fuel through piezoelectricity, through frequencies. And all of this crystalline stuff, this quartz stuff that Morgellons is making and issuing, with or without logos, is part of that internal effort to experiment with the body's natural materials and their response to frequencies, and vice versa. The artificial materials stealing from biological energy and expanding themselves and their purview.
This is important, right? We spoke, you and I, off air the other day, and I did ask you, would we have a bit of time to get into TV drama and film drama, movie drama programming? Here's a brilliant tweet from Fluffles. Now, I've had a very serious visit to the dentist today. I'm a bit sore, and I am. My speech is a bit impeded by it, so excuse me for that. But Fluffles, I can't even say it. He says, "This is my first ever tweet, Richie. Love the show, but this stuff resembles the movie Prometheus." Now, that's an interesting one. How much of what we see in science fiction, and not just in science fiction, do we think might be preparing the ground for this, Sofia, in terms of getting us to come to terms with it before it happens?
Richie, it's all operating on generational separation and generational continuity. So remember how our parents were freaked out by our guitars and our long hair and our music and our bell bottoms? And
yeah,
the generation that grew up with that, to them it was all normal. And so what you're seeing today is you're seeing a new generation of children and young people who have no problem with technologies. They drag their iPhones around everywhere. They're going to think that to be enhanced technologically, to have a chip in your brain such that you don't have to Google anything, because all you have to do is think the question and boom, comes a flood of answers. So to be integrated with highly advanced technology such that you're not separate from it is going to be cool. It's going to be fantastic. And they're going to permit themselves to be joined with all of this because it will be the product of their time.
Going to mention this because one of the things we don't do here is we don't censor people. There's a guy called Hutch who's tweeting at the moment. Hutch, good evening. Welcome to the programme. Hutch says that he has 5 years hands-on working experience on aircraft. And he says that we're all basically talking cuckoo because what we are seeing in the skies are contrails and not chemtrails which don't exist. He says he has 5 years hands-on working experience on aircraft. Now, of course, I don't believe him, but I should clarify that. I do believe that he has worked on aircraft, and I'm not calling him a liar, but I'm going to call compartmentalization here, and I'm going to say that he's not maybe, there are things he could read, there are films he could watch, there are whistleblowers he could listen to. He's not aware of it. But anyway, I'm just going to mention the tweet because he's out there and he's saying that he doesn't believe it. Over to you, Sofia.
Well, again, he's one person and, I respect his experience, but it doesn't mean that he's worked on the types of aircraft that release this, if they are aircraft at all. I've watched the spraying from the sky. I've taken pictures of the trails from the sky. I have pilot friends who definitely know that it's going on. The adaptation of atmospheric, let's just say natural atmospheric developments into stable haze and artificial clouds comes from the work of Daniel Rosenfeld, atmospheric scientist, who was the first to identify that particulates from pollution being very, very small would create a stable haze over cities, and those cities would not receive the normal rainfall. So I believe this is what led to the experimentation with particulates that are spread at altitude, that are small enough that they serve as condensation nuclei for atmospheric moisture, and that creates the haze. And what is a raindrop? A raindrop is simply a speck of dust or salt that has an affinity for moisture that is airborne, and it collects ambient moisture, and then that's a little droplet. But when the droplet gets big enough, it becomes unstable, it falls to the earth as rain. So what they've managed to do is create artificial haze. They're blanketing the planet. They're streaking the sky. They're experimenting with cloud forms. Ask this guy to look at clouds and compare them to cloud texts from 50 years ago, which he's going to have a hard time finding. But we don't see natural cloud forms very often any longer. We see synthetic cirrus. We don't see natural cirrus. We see the cirrus uncinus, the hooked cloud. We see a ton of very milky haze that is altering the effect of sunlight, blanketing the earth, trapping moisture and humidity. Some of this has a desiccating effect. Experiments are being carried out all over the world. The pH of the soil is changing such that where you used to grow tomatoes, you cannot grow them anymore. You're going to have to change crops, and farmers are going out of business. I mean, this is a big, big, big stage.
That's the sickening part of all of this, Sofia, is that as well as the Morgellons, the whole chemtrail agenda is multifaceted, because you're just touching on there the destruction of the soil, causing abiotic stress in the soil, which of course Monsanto have a ready-made seed for. You know, it really does cheese me off sometimes that people can't connect the dots. You know, Monsanto, one of the most malevolent companies that's ever, operated on planet Earth, have seeds, Terminator seeds, which don't reproduce, the death of birth, as Vandana Shiva has quite rightly called it. Oh, we have seeds that will work in abiotic stress, and we have the patent to them, and it's sickening, and it all adds up. I just want to acknowledge Stevie G and Lou Mason and Devlin Mallow and everybody else who's tweeting on this. Huge interest in this. I'll tell you what, Sofia, you know what the depressing thing is? What you said to me about 3 or 4 minutes ago. It's not difficult for the agenda or for the cabal to sell this to kids. They are addicted, aren't they, Sofia? We saw Reuters did an article today. There are kids already queuing outside Apple stores all over the world in advance of a phone being released tomorrow. How can you beat that, Sofia?
Well, what those kids don't realize, Richie, and this is the sad thing, is that they're not going to have working reproductive organs, because Apple infertility, I have a post on my blog with that title. So if you go to sofiasmallstorm.com and you scroll down for Apple infertility, that one will blow your mind. The frequencies are blowing out our biology. They are way too high in oscillations for the normal cellular structure to handle. We have crystalline proteins throughout our bodies. We have cell membranes that just cannot take these oscillations in the gigahertz range, which is billions of hertz. Our natural body likes oscillations 12 hertz, Richie, 7 to 12 hertz. That's the Earth's natural electromagnetic field. That's the definition in that bandwidth of hertz. And where these phones are rattling through us at, 1 billion, 2 billion, Wi-Fi is 2.4 billion, and who's without it today? So the sterility, the infertility of these children is definitely going to assert itself. They're not going to be reproductive. They're going to have state-supervised or lab-assisted reproduction if they have any gender at all, right? We're into the transgender phase of our evolution. And so all this will be normal for them. They will be happy to have technology help them conceive, or better yet, technology produce a human being in an artificial womb somewhere, and then they can claim it, they can apply to be the parent of it. Who knows what's going to happen? But this will be their age, their life. It's very different from ours.
And they want it. With you and me, we're of a similar age, you and I. It is, it's difficult, of course, for them to get us to go along with it. But with the kids, they're conditioned to want this stuff. I mean, all manner of studies and surveys have been done about implanted technology, and where kids have been asked, like you mentioned a few minutes ago, wouldn't it be wonderful in the future if you just had to think about, who are the presidents on Mount Rushmore, and the answer pops into your head, and they think it's a good idea, Sofia. So they're going to embrace it. They're not going to run screaming for the hills like you and I would.
Right.
Depressing,
it'll be what they have grown up with, and they will consider this the height of achievement for them, to have the capacity of a machine and to have that much at your fingertips in your brain. This is what is going to be considered good. And you and I have a different stance on it. So, Richie, I just want to mention that this woman that I've interviewed, I really hope, I'm sorry that there's going to be a bit of a lag between this show and the post that I do, but if you go to sofiasmallstorm.com or aboutthesky.com and you click on the podcast page, you will get this new show that I will have done with Elizabeth about Morgellons. And she is the most stoic person that I have ever encountered in my life. What she's having to deal with going on in her body a daily basis. And I'm going to mention this now because the body does not consider this to be part of it. There's a point on a daily basis where whatever is developing in these tubules, the body shouts for it to be taken out. And so this poor woman has to go into the bathroom and dig and pull and yank at these tubes inside her. And this is what produces the forms. The forms come rolling out, and they are completely not natural. She's had little fetus-like things, seahorses, eels, my God, bugs, moths, and the moths come out in a sack of their own that she splits open with tweezers, and they're all dry inside, and they start to fly.
We will, of course, share that podcast, and I know David Icke will put it on the headlines page when you publish that, and we will alert our listeners to it because of the conversation we had today, Sofia. We're nearly out of time. Next time you come on the program, hopefully that will be soon. We'll do a full show because there's so many other areas that you've been researching and studying, and you've got a very unique perspective, and the way you go about doing what you do, I like a lot. So we'll do a longer program in the future. Some of our listeners regularly criticize me and say, it's good to know this stuff, Richie, but what's the end game? What's the solution? What can people do about it if this crap, as Gerald Salente would say, is being dumped out of planes onto them? What can they do about it, Sofia, before we finish?
Well, ultimately, Richie, I think we live in a very compressed, very unpleasant third dimension, and we are multidimensional. You've got to go to David Icke's work, and you've got to start really understanding it, that we have a way out, but it's not necessarily in the third dimension. We have to call upon ourselves to be greater than we are. We have to, life has been given to us. Whoever gave it to us, whether it was God, our parents coming together and conceiving us, this is a gift. And it isn't without its very wonderful moments and its very wondrous experiences and possibilities. And it's that we have to focus on, Richie. It's from that we have to draw our power. We have to reclaim our power. We have to realize that we are magnificent, even though we feel very small and helpless and our bank account is, languishing and we've got too much stress and too much illness. We still can, I don't even know how to say this, but we can ascend above that, whether you do it by prayer, whether you do it by intention and just visualization. I don't know. I don't have the words for it, but I know it's real and I know it's there. And instead of going, oh my God, this is awful, I cannot survive this, I don't know what I'm going to do.
You do. You do have the words for it. You just said it there. You put it very eloquently. Ultimately, love, infinite love and pure love and doing things for one another is going to wipe these guys out, because that will create an energy in and of itself. I have no doubt about that. Folks, I want you to go to sofiasmallstorm.com, as Sofia said, or go to aboutthesky.com. Come back real soon, Sofia. Thanks for sharing your time with us. I really appreciate it.
Okay. It's all yours anytime you want.
Marvellous. And do let us know when the podcast is going to be published so we can put it out there as well.
I will.
Marvellous. The lovely Sofia Smallstorm on the line to us from her home in California.